Wednesday, March 9th, 2022. I will convene the study session of the Planning Commission. And I don't think we have any business beyond the Broadview Shores revisions. So Aaron, are you facilitating that?
Yeah, I can open that up, introduce it, and then we've got Brad Mackay here or on Zoom with us to go through it. So if you recall, earlier this year, I think it was, we went through some ideas that Brad Mackay with Ivory is contemplating with the Broadview Shores development. So he's back again with that. The main goal of bringing it back to you tonight is to get some feedback on direction as he prepares text amendments to the actual SDP 5 zone code. Just wanted to get some initial feedback from the Planning Commission before he files application for that. So with that, I'll go ahead and open it up to Brad. And Brad, just let me know when you want me to switch slides, and I'm happy to do that for you.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes. Thank you, Brad.
Hey, thanks for having me back. Last time I presented to you, I was actually sick with COVID. So probably 90% of what you heard come out of my mouth didn't make any sense at all. So hopefully Aaron and I have been working together to see if we can make things more clear to you so that you can help give us some guidance and direction tonight on how you would like to see us proceed. The first couple of slides, Aaron, if you don't mind, just click a couple. If you remember from last time, during the process over the years of Broadview Shores, things have changed. One of the largest things that's impacting our current zone text document is the change of the city standard street sections. As you were probably aware, in the old days, the sidewalk was actually a part of the people's yards. And now it's actually in the city right away. So that changes all the setbacks and all of the product types under the current SPD 5 zone. So that all needs to be amended anyway. Number two, we've been asked by the mayor's office and all of the different departments actually have come to us and asked us to look at helping facilitate a grocer in the area and create some set aside land for some commercial on the new Lakeview Parkway and 2000 North intersection. And then we just wanted to update the code to adapt to current housing standards, as well as try to create a zone text document that will allow for flexibility as we move forward. Already in just the last 10 years, we've seen so many changes in housing that we want to create a code that will withstand the test of time so that we have flexibility to adapt to the market. And then last, provide some affordable options for people to live in the city. This is the current land use map that's approved. Worked for years getting this approved, and it's a good plan. Next. This was the one that you saw last time. One of the only things that I haven't changed on this plan is I think Dave Anderson suggested that we switch from ERUs. I haven't made that change yet because I wanted to wait for direction from the Planning Commission to see if we're okay moving forward with this direction. But I have no problems changing that. So using this map, what I've done is I've kind of isolated each village and taken village by village and broken it apart to give you an idea of what we're thinking with that. So if you go to the next slide, for instance, Village 1 is where the majority of our existing subdivision is. We've already done 5 phases of the existing Broadview Shores neighborhood, with the 6th phase wrapping up around the elementary school to your left. in that area, and that would just follow the same typical product, single family product that we've been building already. So what I've done is broken out the map, and then down below the map, you see a table, and it just kind of highlights what you would be looking at in Village 1, which gives you the number of acres in that village, along with the units per acre ranges. And the idea is you could have some units that are, a 5,000 square foot lot, and some units that are a half acre lot in that zone. But it provides a single family traditional neighborhood that you've seen in the existing parts of our neighborhood. Just showed you a couple of the home types that have been built in the existing neighborhood. And then on the right, it shows you the two applicable tables that would be inserted into the document that would govern the requirements for building permit. So the setbacks, the height, the number of units per acre, etc., for the homes that are built within that village. So hopefully that makes sense to you. It simplifies things a lot to have it in a table format. It's easy to read for both our architectural team and your building officials and planning staff when they review for building permit.
It's pretty small print, so I can't really tell. I mean, it looks like it would be useful, but I can't really see what it says.
Yeah, I
don't know.
Aaron, did you? Oh, there we go.
Just bringing up a bigger version of it here for you.
Okay.
So for instance, the two tables that I included in that village would be the low density single family table and the medium density single family table. So the idea is if you have something that is 6,000 square foot lot, you would follow that table. It would say you can't exceed 4 units per acre, your minimum lot widths, your minimum front setbacks, depending on if it's a front load home or a rear load home. You'd have your rear setbacks, side setbacks, and all of these are open for discussion. This is just an example format. I'm just trying to throw something out for review so that we can take a look at it and see if this makes sense. But the idea is you would follow this table. This is very similar to the way Lehigh City has their code written, and Saratoga Springs has their code written this way, and a couple other cities that I work in. And it makes it really easy to follow for the building officials and our team, our architectural teams at Ivory. So that's kind of how the table reads. If you go to the next PowerPoint slide, this would be Village 2. So this is also, most of this village is already built as well. The idea here would be the remaining portion of what's left in Village 2 would be developed with kind of a cluster single family type of housing. Our thought would be we would do that Scandinavian modern architecture that he's highlighted right there. And then our intent would be to build a clubhouse and swimming pool for the whole community within the remaining portion of this village, so that it's kind of central to the overall community. This one, again, I've put some tables that could be applicable to that area. This is something, if we wanted to do townhomes here on the approved concept plan, we have townhomes approved. Again, it's open for flexibility. I just wanted to, show you how we would use these tables to get variety within the project. So in this, I included 4 different tables that could be potentially used in Village 2 for the remaining area, if that's something you were interested in. Again, you have your medium density multifamily, which would be a townhome type product. And the intent here is to have density controlling rather than worrying about setbacks. And then we would just try to have distance between units or distance in the front yards and perimeter is the idea on a townhome project.
Hey, Brad,
Yeah.
are the lots in Village 2 already completely platted?
No, so we purchased the Preet property, Earl Preet's property, and a property owned by a guy named Dean Benson that is in between phase 3 and phase 1 that would be remaining to build in Village 2. So that's the area that I'm looking at to build with a cluster single family. And the concept plan that we've done, which I haven't, because we're talking mainly zoning here, the concept plan that I've done is actually less dense than what's approved on the plan, because the whole intent is to have the density move up around the commercial corridor and make this area less dense. But that's kind of the intent of this village, is to make it more of a clustered single family type of product.
So I'm assuming that those lots are going to be designated for that purpose before you start construction on any of them?
Yes, for
Okay.
sure. Yes.
All right.
Next, Village 3. Village 4, I should say. This one is the row of land along there's a kind of a dirt road that was built to facilitate the sewer lift station, and it's planned to connect out to Geneva Road, and it will connect Geneva Road over to Lakeview Parkway. So this will have quite a bit of traffic on it. It's kind of a major road entry into the project. So we were thinking this village, it could have a potential use for several different product types. Out near Geneva, it might make sense to put some townhomes or some density near Geneva. And then over next to the commercial area, to drive the commercial, it would be a good place to have higher density. And then maybe in the middle of the village, have some lower density cluster single family, or some uses for empty nester, 55 and older type of product type in the middle. So this village actually has a wide range of table of uses, so that we could flex and facilitate the needs of several different types of products in that village. Next, you have.
Is that road 2001? Or are we not at that?
Not yet, not that far north. Sorry.
You're next, Aaron. Okay, Village 5 is up on the north, and this would just be a low density single family area, 2 to 3.5 units per acre. Just traditional single family. Again, with the density change of Geneva traffic, with the intended traffic shift to Lakeview Parkway, this is an area that would become lower density single family, and I've included that table. Next, Village 6 is over kind of isolated on the west side of Lakeview Parkway. This is where we would envision the high density to try and drive that commercial Village 8 corridor. This would be mostly apartment densities in that area. And the idea would be to have something that's kind of like one of these photographs here that would drive that commercial and put the majority of our density in that location. And I've included the potential land use elements that would be envisioned in that part of the community. And then next, Village 7, and in some of the comments you'll see in the red line zone text document, this was not originally included in Broadview Shores. This is an additional piece that that makes the increase of units from what was originally approved up to where we proposed it to you last time. This is a piece that's owned by the city that was acquired to facilitate Provo High School. And some of this has wetlands on the property. So whoever develops it in the future would need some creative flexibility to develop the property. And so I included 3 different tables that I thought would potentially work for whoever ends up owning this piece of property and developing it, to provide them some flexibility on that piece. And then the last one is Village H8, which is commercial. And the idea would be that somehow we would work out a deal with the city to give them an agreement that for a period of time, this village would be held for commercial, or given the city the ability to purchase it for that commercial grocery store opportunity. But we all know that zoning documents need to live for a long time. So the idea is it would have a residential overlay if the commercial use was not viable. And therefore, I've provided a few tables that could be used for residential overlay in that village. So that's kind of the intent of this document, is to provide kind of a guideline going forward in the future, and give the flexibility to adjust to market changes. A lot of this is already built, a lot of it's already planned, but with what's left, we would like to see what we can do to make it as great of a community as it already is, and maybe drive some new uses that would benefit the overall west side of Provo City. I know that grocer is a big deal, and for the west side, and I know Lakeview Parkway is a big deal for the west side. So we're just trying to work with the city to come up with a document that works for everyone. And like I said in the beginning, this is just a draft. It's just an idea. Nothing's really set in stone. We're just looking for some direction, so that if this is the way we would like to go, then I can work with staff to get more detailed on specific setbacks or density requirements within each village, and we can work on that to come forward with an actual document that we can then move forward on having approved.
Okay. Well, I really like the effort to blend a variety of housing types in a very functional sort of array. So I don't know if I said that last time, but that's one of the things that we're hoping to see more of. And I'm glad to see that you're bringing that forward. Other commissioners, do you have comments, questions? Going to be really short study session if we don't.
Well, we could actually review how the zone text would change as well. I provided that red line document. If you look at this, this is the actual zoning text document. So the areas that are highlighted and crossed out would be amended. And a lot of it is amended with those tables that I've already shown you. But there's things in this zone text that are really causing us problems and causing the people who are looking to buy in here problems. For instance, there was a statement that says no kitchens are allowed in the basements. And I think that's been a very difficult thing when someone's spending $1 million on a house. They would like to have a kitchenette in the basement, and we're not allowed to have kitchens in the basement because of this existing zone text. To the point where they're not even allowed to have sinks right now in their basements for a kitchenette or microwaves or a refrigerator. We're just restricting all of that. You can see the comments that Aaron and I went back and forth on this red line document and of sections that need to be amended or replaced. And this is the detail that we would need to review next if we decide to go forward with this.
Commissioner Fife has some questions, so I don't want you to get too far beyond where he raised his hand. Peter,
Great.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Commissioner. Yeah, just a quick question on the basement kitchenettes and whatnot. Has there been a reasoning that's been given as to why those kitchens are required or kitchenettes? Is there anything to do with like the flood level or water table or plumbing going through that? Is there any reasoning that's been given?
Not that I'm aware of, just that it's in the zoning text is the only thing I know of.
So typically we do allow second kitchens as long as the owner is willing to sign a second kitchen agreement that says the basement won't be turned into a second dwelling unit. But in this case, when this amendment went through, specific language was added to say you couldn't have second kitchens out in this zone. I'm not exactly sure why that restriction was put in Broadview Shores. It's been so many years and I just don't remember.
So I mean, I know this is kind of getting into the weeds, but the origin of that has been lost, like the reasoning behind all of that then, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so what Bill alluded to is in almost all the residential zones in the city, if you're willing to sign an occupancy restriction and put that on the title saying that the whole property will only be occupied by one family, you can have a second kitchen.
Okay, gotcha.
For some reason in this SDP 5 zone, that was disallowed. So
Gotcha.
They would look to be correcting that.
I'm assuming that was negotiated back in the early 2000s with the original Celebration project because they were having a little bit higher density overall. So I'm assuming that's what it was. But again, that was early 2000s and I'm not positive.
Bill, does the recent legislation and Provo's discussions about ADUs impact this?
It really doesn't because the city council only allowed ADUs where they're allowed now, plus in the R120 and RA zones. And that took us to the state mandated minimum. So it doesn't apply to any of our single family zones or a project like this with an SDP zone. Is that correct, Aaron?
That's right, yeah.
And
Does the city have an objection to changing that requirement for this zone?
No, I think it's an unfortunate restriction that was put on Broadview Shores.
Yeah, from this is Rob Hunter with engineering. From a couple of questions that were brought up were regarding sewer and the groundwater, and it's not because of those, because there would be no reason to restrict kitchens in particular when the basements are going to have other fixtures that are going to need sewer, and our requirements already to be above the groundwater table, so it's not an engineering restriction.
Okay, other questions? All right, Brad, sorry, we keep like pulling you back and then saying go, but.
That's okay. Yeah, so really, I guess the thing we need to figure out is, does this format make sense to the Planning Commission? Should I work with staff to continue down this path? I can review different setbacks, square footages, all of those details with staff and make sure we're all on the same page, and then actually do a formal submittal to you and move through this process so that we can amend all of these things that need to be amended.
Dave?
Thank you, Brad. We talked about just kind of the general numbers. I know the last time you presented about how many homes are left to be built, or how many additional homes would the change accommodate here?
Probably, I don't know the exact unit count right now, but
Maybe just give or take.
I would guess that there's probably 900 units left to build out of the 1,600.
Okay. That's more than I remembered. So, okay. I guess my inclination would be to maybe try to get as clearly defined at this point as we can. So maybe down to just lay everything out, street level design, all of it, product type, the whole thing. 900 homes, how many years worth of construction would you guess that that's going to be?
Well, it depends because we don't own everything. So that's part of the problem. I mean, the intent of this zone text document is not to get to that detailed level like we've been stuck in the past to do. It's to create a zoning document that's flexible, and then we go forward with like a preliminary plat or something like that that would be more detailed from there. That's the intent of this zone change, is not to get to that point where everything's so pinned down and detailed that we can't be flexible anymore.
Yeah, I understand that. And I have reservations about allowing a lot of flexibility, but 900 homes, that's quite a few.
Well, you've got probably 300 to 400 of them in Village. What is that? The one Village 6, is it? To the west of the commercial. So of that 900 that's remaining, a lot of them are right in that area clustered around the commercial. So you're going to have apartments there. In this proposal, you're going to have a lot of them to try and drive the commercial. So that is the intent, is to put all the density right there. And the rest of the villages, you're not going to see a lot of density. So Village 4 and Village 6 are your density points. And that's why I kind of went through that breakdown of each village to show where your high density would be, and to try and give you some idea of where you're getting the density. The rest of the areas are basically single family or, clustered single family, but not really that big of a density issue.
So of what we're talking about here, just maybe one of the other questions right off the bat, we're anticipating that roughly half of the homes are going to be for rent product.
Yes. In this scenario.
Yeah. Okay. Brad, thanks.
Yep.
That brings up the idea of maybe HOAs per village or anything like that. Are you looking at any sort of structure for making sure that the product that you build is going to be maintained and go forward in a cohesive kind of a living circumstance?
Yeah. So we have an existing HOA now in Broadview Shores. I don't know if you know Jared King, but he is our neighbor liaison on our board for the HOA. And it's basically a master association that controls all of the maintenance and architectural for the whole community. And then there's what we call benefited assessment areas. So if there's a village or an area that has an amenity in it that is unique to that village, they would have a different assessment. Or if we create, for instance, a 55 and older community where we want to do full snow removal and lawn maintenance, they would fall under the master association, but they would have a separate assessment, benefited assessment, so that they could have their yards maintained. So each village is looked at separately with a global master homeowners association.
And if I could just add to that, they're actually bound to that, Laurie. They're bound to that by the DA that was approved with this zone that's on all these properties. So that will continue even through the text amendments, that they would still have to maintain that.
Okay.
And can I go back? I know Dave mentioned, will they all be apartments or rentals? I guess I don't want to commit to that right now because I don't know what will be built here. We could end up building townhomes for sale, condominiums for sale, apartments for rent. That's the whole idea of this, is to create flexibility in the zoning document so that we can adapt to market changes. So I misspoke on that, right? Just a few minutes ago to Dave, because I really don't know that yet, because we don't know, we haven't planned that. We haven't gone forward with any preliminary plat type of plans, but the intent is it would be higher density.
All right, Dave and then Brian.
I appreciate that. That makes sense, Brad, but just kind of trying to understand what, maybe the parameters would be. And
yeah.
I wouldn't anticipate that you would expect, if you propose something that's consistent with this document, for it to be denied.
Correct. Right.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
In as much as this gets approved, that is really the end of any decision making on the part of anybody with the city.
Okay. Brian?
Yeah, so I first want to apologize for being late today. Had a call I couldn't get off of, so I missed a portion of this. But a question along with this idea of units. Does Ivory Homes have a standard they're seeking on these properties based on market, or is it whoever comes along and whatever they propose? I guess, do you have some standards you're trying to keep to with the, is Ivory Homes developing out all of this, or are they selling off to other builders?
So all of the land that we own, which we own everything except for Village 5 and that village right there, which most likely we'll end up with half of the village where the cursor is right now too. That is owned by the Kurt and Bunnels. Most of that is owned by the Bunnels that we've already bought land from, and Kurt Bunnels already talked to us about buying his portion of that. But the rest of it we own, and we have all kinds of different product types. So really we could build anything from the highest density. Our highest density product you've probably seen us build is high-rise apartments in downtown Salt Lake. That's probably up to the 80 to 100 units per acre, down to 10-acre estate lots. So we build anything in between, and we have products for all of those. So when you see, and as far as our standards go, everything is high standard. We don't build anything that we would be ashamed of, and everything would be high quality, just like what we've built in Broadview Shores already. So
yeah, and I apologize. I'm thinking about this like other developers who just come in and get approved and sell off the land, but you'd be developing this all out.
Yes.
I will say that after the last presentation, this is the one afterwards. I was all like, that's going to be a cool project. I was excited about this project for Provo. But it always comes down to those details, and those details are so important for getting a real community where people really connect. And there's a lot of those details, which is why we like to see details, but we understand those details aren't fleshed out yet. So,
yeah, this would be the zoning document. And then I believe in this, as part of the SBD 5, There's also a separate design guideline document that we had to get approved for Broadview Shores. So this would be the zoning change and the text change that would take place along with the map. And then we would follow that up, from what I understand, with a design guideline document that would give specific design guidelines for each type of density or product type.
Right.
And that's where you'd get into the details of, you know, how it lives to the street and what's required, you know, to be done to make this a livable community.
Okay.
And our intent is not to build something that is just slapped together and we're in and out. We try to build stuff that withstands the test of time.
So, along with that, then, will there be no front load townhomes?
There could be. Most of the time we don't do. Ivory is not, I would say, of all of our townhomes, the only time we get into front load townhomes is if we do them in like a perimeter where they're backing onto something that is, you know, like maybe adjacent to the wetlands or something like that, where you don't want to have people walk around into something that, you know, that isn't a street interface or an open space interface that's not conducive to having that as a rear load. But
right.
most of our town homes, as you can see, are front loaded or a rear loaded type of product loaded off of an alley. And we like to make them so they front on either a street or a paseo whenever possible.
Yeah, because a front load townhome, for me, from the human vitality and experience part, it's probably the worst product for human experience. So I'd love it if we could just ban those statewide, because I really hate front load townhomes. But
the only time that they've been really successful for us is like I said, when you're buffering on like an existing neighborhood that has you have a bunch of rear load or rear yards that you're, you know, abutting some front loaded townhomes adjacent to single family homes, so that backyards touch backyards. Or like down in St. George, we have a great community called Sienna Hills where we have duplexes around the perimeter with backyards, and then we have rear loaded fourplexes in the middle of the community. And that's one of the nicest communities that we've done down in St. George. And
I actually think I've stayed in that development.
Yeah, everyone does, because it's popular for VRBO and Airbnb people.
Okay, so I'll actually say then that was one thing I didn't like about that development, was there was no on-street parking because of the front-loaded nature of it, or it was just very, very limited on-street parking, and we were constantly moving cars this way and that way, and which is one of the reasons I don't like front load, is it takes away the street presence and it makes the street more like an alley hybrid.
Yeah.
And so it to me, it makes a really poor street condition.
Sure. I don't disagree with you there.
Yeah.
What I've liked to do recently is actually bookend street blocks with townhomes where they face out onto an existing street, and then mix some rear loaded single family homes in the middle of the block and things like that. So you actually have townhomes intermixed with single family rear load, and it worked really well together.
No, that's exactly what I'd love to see. I think that works really nicely, and having that mix, I'm glad you're open to that kind of a mix, because most people say no, townhomes have to be together, single family has to be together, and I like it when they mix just a little bit and they can complement each other. So excited to see what you come up with on this. Like I said, this is probably the project I'm most excited to see how it develops out. So don't disappoint me.
Well, yeah, I don't plan to. And I am open to any kind of help with planning along the way too. We're in this together. I mean, we're not a developer that's trying to come make a quick buck and jump out of town. This is a legacy project. So whatever we can do to work with you guys to make this a great community, that's what we're trying to do.
Well, and we appreciate you coming back for these work sessions and involving us, and been really happy with the process. So thank you for that, Brad.
Yeah, thank you.
That's all I have.
Brad, I have one more question. And then we only have about 5 minutes left. So if commissioners have additional questions, they need to jump in. The overall density of this, because you've got some areas that are going to be quite dense, does it fit within the 4 overall units per acre density that has been sort of put in place for the west side?
So this density is basically what the utilities and the roads were sized for from the original celebration plan that was approved. So we took into account all of that's why I have this table as ERUs, called equivalent residential units. So we took into account all of the commercial areas that were originally approved, all of the residential product types that were approved. And so on the original plan, all that was focused on was the residential units, but everyone forgot that there was a lot of commercial with stacked residential above that commercial in the original plan. And so that's why when I originally proposed this as ERUs, I did that so that it would match what was originally planned. And for engineering, it makes it a lot easier when the engineering staff has their master plans based on ERUs. Now they can know that an ERU is planned within their infrastructure. And so that's why I originally did that. Dave Anderson wanted it switched back to just say units and focus on residential units. And I'm open to either way, whatever works best for you guys at the city. That's my intent.
Okay, Dave has a question, and I'd also like to hear from engineering to make sure that they're on board, don't have concerns. But Dave, you first.
Yes, so Brad, I'm hearing that this is above 4 homes per acre, let's just say.
I haven't done the math on it, actually. It's whatever was approved.
Okay. I just think it's important for us on the city side to speak the same language with different developers from project to project. If there's a particular ceiling for development on the west side that's measured in homes per acre, I think we should stick with that kind of phraseology, or if we want to just shift the phraseology and use that consistently across the board as we talk with different developers, I'd be fine with that as well. But
so there's about 280 acres. And the approved, so this is about 5. This project was approved at about 5 point something ERUs per acre originally.
So that would perhaps have some grandfathering built in. Engineering, does anyone want to jump in and give us your ideas on this or your feedback?
So this is Rob Hunter, and you don't have the benefit of having David Day here today. He's on vacation, and so I'm filling in, and he's the one that's I think been more keyed into the project here. But as far as has been communicated back to me, we don't have an issue of just changing up the type of uses, as long as the overall, our big thing that we really need to key in on this west side more than anything else. I mean, there's traffic, there's water, but the big one is the sewer. But if we're just doing different types of uses, but we're getting to the same kind of overall capacity, it's not an issue.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? I feel like this is a good direction to go. I don't have strong feelings about the way you measure it one way or the other. I agree with Dave that it makes sense to be consistent across development. So whatever the city wants to establish as their standard is probably what we should use for all of the developments. But I don't have strong feelings one way or another about what that should be. But I really, really like the blend here. Because I think that can be a model for some of the other developers that are coming in with developments that are 10 to 20 acres, so not as big as this, but still they could have that as a model, and we'd like to see some blending happen. So I like this example. I
Great.
don't hear other people saying much one way or another. Daniel.
Yeah, I'd just like to echo what Laurie said with the blend. I jumped in a little late, like 5 or 6 minutes late, and I'm just the only comment I'd make is like I don't want to speak ignorantly, but I'm hoping in some of these higher density areas that there's amenity space or amenity green space that goes along with those areas. It's a lot easier to swallow those densities when it has those amenity spaces.
Yeah, and actually, especially in apartment complexes, it's a competitive market. I realize everyone needs a house right now, but to actually get people to rent in your communities, the amenity package is a big deal to us. So we look at all kinds of amenities, not just the open space and green areas, but we look at, internet options and rooms for them to conduct business and all of the different amenities that go along with an apartment complex. So you can see what we've done up at University Mall, for instance. That's all us building all the apartments around University Mall in Orem. So we look at all of that kind of stuff, and I think that would be something that we should put in the design guideline document, is those amenities and the ability to make it livable.
Okay. Other comments from commissioners? It is 5:49. So if there's nothing else, we should adjourn for 11 minutes and come back for our hearing at 6 o'clock. Okay, thanks, Brad. Wednesday, March 9th, 2022, as we begin this hearing session for the Provo City Planning Commission. We have 5 items on the agenda, and those that are marked on the agenda with an asterisk are legislative and to be forwarded. We'll be forwarding a recommendation to the City Council. The ones without are administrative, and we will be making decisions on those items. I will begin by reading a statement about the Open and Public Meetings Act. Due to Utah County's high level of coronavirus cases as determined by the state's COVID-19 transmission index, I've determined that conducting meetings with an anchor location presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present there. Therefore, for the next 30 days, all meetings of the Planning Commission will be conducted via electronic means. And let me call the roll of the commissioners. If you would state your name and whether or not you have any conflicts. Commissioner Miller. He was on. Maybe not. Commissioner Fife.
No conflicts.
Commissioner Anderson.
Dave Anderson, no conflicts.
Commissioner Miller.
Sorry about that. Commissioner Miller, no conflicts.
Commissioner Knudsen. Is he in the conference room?
Robert Knudsen, no conflicts.
Thank you. Commissioner Henry.
Brian Henry, no conflicts.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Daniel Gonzalez, no conflicts.
Commissioner Jensen.
Lisa Jensen, no conflicts.
And I am Laurie Urquiaga. I have no conflicts tonight. All right. We will begin with the first 2 items on our agenda. I'll read them in together. Number 1, Susan Palmer requests concept plan approval for 2 industrial buildings in a proposed airport industrial zone located at 3701 West Center Street. And Susan Palmer requests a zone change from A110 to Airport Industrial AI for approximately 33 acres located at 3701 West Center Street. Now, those are the Provo Bay neighborhood, and Dustin Wright has the staff report.
Thank you. So the properties that we're looking at here tonight are located out by the airport, outlined here in red. I'll start here just showing the zoning of the property. It's currently zoned as agricultural, surrounded by manufacturing and the public facility and other agricultural properties as well. The applicant's request is to change the zoning to fit with the general plan. As you can see here, the general plan is for airport compatible or airport industrial zone, so that they can build those industrial buildings. So here we're just looking at a conceptual street layout that shows the larger area surrounding the properties and how those properties could be connected in to the street network at a future date when those are developed. And that's just something that we typically have when we're doing a property this size, and there's not a lot of infrastructure out there. So here's the concept plan that they have provided the city for review. The concept plan shows these 2 large industrial buildings on these separate parcels. So staff reviewed the applications that were submitted and reviewed them with the airport industrial zone. So that's the new zone that got adopted into our city code last year. That's specifically designed for properties around the Provo airport. At the time that we wrote the staff reports, there was a development agreement that the applicant was working with the city on to help address some issues that Public Works had with the utilities and services that could be provided to this site. And so at the time of the application or the staff report was written, it was looking like that was moving forward. Since that time, there's been some issues that have come up that the development agreement still needs to be finalized. And so this time, staff would recommend that we continue both of these items so that those issues with the development agreement can be worked out to be able to address those larger concerns that Public Works had with this location, this development at this time. And so that's kind of the staff report that I just wanted to touch on and just note, that we'd like to have these two items continued to a future date once we can get that development agreement in place that would address those larger concerns. I believe we have Rob Hunter from Public Works if there's specific questions as to what those issues that you saw in your staff report from Public Works are and how their recommendation to continue it as well for that. So I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time from the Planning Commission.
Helps if I'm not muted. Commissioner Anderson.
Dustin, how is the required parking calculated for something like this?
So the required parking is calculated based off of the square footage of the structure. So for warehouse, it's 1 stall per 600 square feet. So their requirement based off of what they showed for square footage would it be 912 parking stalls. Their concept plan shows 939 parking stalls.
Great, thanks.
Okay, Commissioner Jansen.
I had a few questions for staff. Is one of the criteria for zone change is that it's a fluid change of, we're not changing the zone even though it matches with the plan and leaving other incompatible zones in the middle. So does this create a zoning gap in between the neighboring properties and what's already been rezoned to the airport zone? Like, are there agricultural segments that'll be left alone or single family or anything like that?
So it'd be this area highlighted in red here, these two large parcels totaling about 30 something acres of land that would be rezoned to the airport industrial zone, which is shown on the future land use map.
So I can't read the designations, but to the right and the left of that in brown, is that the airport industrial zone already?
No, those are M1 zones that were granted for Anderson development months and months ago.
Okay. And then the property to the north that's agricultural, that's the ropes course, right?
Yes.
Okay. So it doesn't, it seems like it goes straight. And then my other question is about traffic. Maybe this is too early in the process to ask the question, but one of my concerns when it talked about having 92 truck bays in the project is how you make sure those 92 or the vehicles that are going to be using those bays don't come up and down Center Street, but use Lakeview Parkway. Is there a plan for that? And then the second part of that is intersection where Lakeview Parkway meets up with Center Street right now is iffy. If there's a lot of people going to the lake, it's hard to make a left turn there. So if we're telling them to take Lakeview Parkway to get there, are there plans for that interchange so that it's wide enough for left turns and there's a light there or something? Maybe that's an engineering question, but those are just my access questions.
Yeah, if engineering would like to answer those questions, that'd be great.
Yes. So first off, with the construction that we're doing right now, north of Center Street on Lakeview Parkway, we're doing the project that goes from Center Street up to 620 North, where Lakeview Parkway ends right now on the north side. And with that project, at the end of that project, we will be constructing a signal. So there will be a signal at the end of this year at Lakeview Parkway and Center Street. In terms of making sure that they don't come down Center Street, there is no way. I know that was something that one of the neighborhood chairs had asked. There's the only portion of Center Street right now that is designated as no truck traffic is the pedestrian mall between 5th West and 2nd East. And right now, Center Street isn't an arterial. So I guess in terms of long-term plans to provide routes to these areas that don't involve Center Street, we have Lakeview Parkway built from Center Street to I-15 to the south, and as of right now, we are widening portions of that, and then we, like I said, are continuing to construct Center Street North, and actually Orem is going in for funding right now. It won't be available if they get regional funding until the year fiscal year 26, but they are planning on continuing Lakeview Parkway up to Geneva Road. So there will be better ways to get from both the north and south from I-15 to this area. But right now, where Center Street is an arterial and it is only one of only 2 interchange connections to I-15, it's not our center to designate arterials as no truck traffic.
Okay. That intersection that you say is going to go in there at Lakeview and Center, is it going to be there's going to be adequate room for turns that are going to be required with truck traffic?
Yeah, so right now there is the way that we have it striped out is going to change when we continue it north. So it will be a full section, Lakeview Parkway will be a full section from Center Street up to 620 North. And so there will be 2 lanes of through traffic and a separated turn lane in each direction.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Henry.
Yeah, a couple questions. First for staff, is this building type kind of what was expected with this airport zone? Is this it? I guess is this what the expectation was in the airport zone, was buildings like this?
Yes. Yeah, this was a use that would be a permitted use within that zone for warehousing, for industrial. Yeah, that's what we're looking for with that zone in this location.
Okay. And then a question. So on the east side of the property, the road comes down and makes kind of a wonky 4-way intersection there. The one road comes in at a weird angle. I know developers like roads on their property lines, but it just feels like this makes for some really strange intersections. Has Planning Commission has staff talked with the applicant about making that intersection straighter with more 90-degree sections and taking kind of the weird jog out of that east-west road to just kind of clean up that intersection?
Rob, do you want to take that question?
So you're talking about on the western portion of that east-west road?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Yeah, so the reason why they're doing that, so we do it. This does the curves that they have in there, and they are coming in at a I think they may be a couple of degrees off, but basically at a 90-degree angle there, understanding that there's a curve there. But the reason why they're doing that is to line up better with a project. Right now, there's a project, as you saw from the zoning, there is a zoning for industrial to the parcel. This would line up with the parcel where it currently is zoned for industrial, without having to push it onto something that right now is not slated for development soon. So it's basically lining up to where yeah, understanding if all this was rezoned and all these parcels were moving forward right now, it may make sense to do it a little straighter, but I think it works out in terms of our best understanding of how these may develop out. It gets the streets into the right place at the right timing, and it meets standard.
Okay. 'Cause, yeah, it just feels like the northern portion of that road, if it were to angle over, it would meet the lower road better, but given property lines, I know that would leave the developer with a sliver of property line on the other side of the road, but thinking about, the benefit to the city to have straight roads instead of these wonky intersections.
Yeah, I think the lengths that we're talking about here, I think looking at it in this view and on a small map like this, maybe over exaggerates how skewed this is, but really it is, in terms of lining things up. Again, because of the parcel lines, we have to take into account also that we're not overburdening, basically forcing things to where one property owner is taking the full brunt of right-of-way dedication, while the other one is getting the benefit of not having to dedicate anything at all.
Right. Okay, so then one last question. On the other side, the road, there's kind of a road on building B, they show a full road. On building A, they don't show the eastern portion, and it looks like there's truck parking blocking the road on that lower half. Can you just walk me through what's going on there?
Yeah, so they don't need to bring the road all the way down. At the southern portion, this is where the airport has purchased. It's not within the airport fence as of now, but the plan is to bring the land that's at the southern edge there into the airport, and so there's really not a reason to bring the road all the way down because it can't go through anyways.
Okay.
It's just bringing it down to a parcel, so the parcel isn't kind of cut off, but they could bring in a cul-de-sac or a knuckle or something down in that area. So this will likely to be able to get some sort of curve will be tweaked, but it, at least from a concept level, is close enough to work with, and we'll hash out the details in the project plan.
Okay, that's the questions I have. Thank you.
All right, do we have Commissioner Miller?
Yeah, so my question, I saw on the staff report about the length of the, I guess, the development and how it's longer than, and there's no block break, meaning the distance between the two roads would be 1,100 feet, I think the staff report says. So is that something that's required by the city to have a, block smaller than that? Would this have to be addressed? Are we giving them, so I guess, is that required by the city, or is that something that staff just wants addressed? And then I guess my other question is, obviously there's no public transportation down to that at this point, but at some point when Provo Airport becomes a larger hub, I assume there's going to be some form of public transportation out to the site. And if so, what would kind of, if any, design standards or factors of this design be catered towards public transportation per se?
So as of right now, so I guess to answer the first part of that question, some of the items that were put on the staff report, David Day is the one that puts together the public works staff reports, and just so they could get them, I guess, put together before he left. We have worked through some of these items, and so the concept plan that you're looking at now does address that particular item. As Dustin said, we're still working through other issues, and so that's why we are recommending continuation at this time, is because we've stalled on final wording for the development agreement and need a bit more time to get some of those things hashed out. But in terms of the spacing, their original did not show this east-west street at all, and it didn't show any street even along its edge on the east side. And so that's what that comment was trying to address. Is it's really long legs for even in an industrial area to have zero spacing. Or zero streets within an 1,100 by 1,400 foot stretch, but they have addressed it at this point. And so, to kind of further answer that question, there's a more of a hard rule of 500 feet in a residential area. There's not as much of a hard rule in the industrial commercial areas, but there is a general requirement of needing to provide street connectivity, and where we have an east-west street at the north end of Duncan, and they were not going to continue that on, and they were not going to provide anything either through their side or to the east beyond what it was. We didn't feel like that that was going to meet that requirement of getting some connectivity. But what you see here, we're okay with. To answer I guess the second part of the transit, although I think we've talked with UTA about the possibility of transit here on the west side in general. I'm not sure. So Center Street is a collector road, and so it's going to be built out as this develops out. Going to be built out to an adequate width to be able to take bus traffic. And then especially on Lakeview Parkway and then Center Street east of Lakeview Parkway, those are both arterial roads. And again, they'll have plenty of space to be able to take bus traffic. In terms of trying to get it down into this particular area, there's no particular plans because this is going to be, more of an industrial area. We would anticipate that the transit, at least in the near future, would be focused on the terminal side of the airport, and then looking at ways that we could provide transportation to some of the residential or particularly commercial hubs out on the west side of town. But one of the things that is a benefit in an industrial area is that even the local streets are built to our widest local street standard, which is 36 feet of pavement. So again, although there's no particular thing saying here's where we're going to put bus locations, if this in the future is determined to be a place that would be a good spot for transit, there will be opportunities with the right-of-way widths that we have through here.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Thanks for answering that.
Okay, any other questions, commissioners, to staff? If not, we'd like to invite the applicant to present any further information he would like to add, and then commissioners can give their questions there. Is the applicant here?
We are trying to contact the applicant.
While we're waiting, I will ask staff, Dustin, what reaction does the applicant have to the request to continue? Have you heard from him? Does he know you're asking for that?
Well, we spoke with representatives of the applicant today and kind of went over the development agreement, and we're still trying to work through some of that language to where both sides felt agreeable to move forward with it. But we weren't able to come to that agreement this morning. So I'm not sure that I'm not sure what their stance is on continuing it, or I know that they did want to be heard tonight, but not sure why they're not available right now.
All right. Well, I'm not sure it's appropriate for us to move forward without Susan or her representative here. I don't think we have anybody to comment on the public hearing. Can you confirm that, Rachel, or not?
No public comments at the time. If you can change the slide, we'll give it 30 seconds.
Okay, Dave Anderson has a question first or a comment.
I was just going to make a motion to continue items 1 and 2, so maybe that was premature.
We have a person here from the public neighborhood chair, sorry, to comment.
Okay, let's see, Commissioner Gonzalez, you have a question or comment?
Yeah, I was gonna go along with Dave on that. Did they not show up in anticipation of this needing to be continued?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Or expecting that it would be continued?
I don't know that we left on saying that it would be continued, so I don't know that that would be the reason.
Okay, well, I would like to give the neighborhood chair who has taken the time to be there to make comment.
Thanks, Laurie. So just a quick comment. I just wanted to follow up with what Lisa Jensen asked about. I think that was a very important question. We did have a neighborhood meeting. It was run by the Provo Bay neighborhood, but I was in attendance because my neighborhood, the Fort Utah neighborhood, is next to the property. It borders the property. And the neighborhood felt like, hey, this is the kind of stuff we're going to get in the airport zone. There was no concerns there. The only concern was the traffic issue because there's so many truck bays here. Yes, Center Street is an arterial road designated as such by the city. It's also, Public Works tells me, the busiest 2-lane road in our entire city. And in my neighborhood, all of the kids that walk to Amelia Earhart have to cross that road. And so if there's any way we can figure out to encourage or require at least a majority of that traffic to go on Lakeview Parkway, that would be a huge benefit to the walkability, livability, and school safety within my neighborhood. And so I feel like even though maybe there's not a normal way that that's done, where there's a will, there's a way. And I think we can find something as we're continuing to work with the developer on this to get most of that traffic off of Center Street. Oh, sorry, I never stated my name. My name's Jonathan Hill, Fort Utah Chair.
Thank you. Okay. Well, under the circumstances, I kind of feel like a motion would be appropriate at this time. So Dave, if you want to jump back in, that would be fine with me. Commissioner Jensen first, I guess.
I just was going to ask Mr. Hill if there's a crossing guard, just out of curiosity for that traffic. For those kids who have to cross the street, do they have to cross just at a crosswalk, or do they have at least a crossing guard assisting them?
They do have a crossing guard during the normal kind of school start and ends. There is no stop sign, no stoplight, anything like that. So anything that's outside of that, short window at the beginning or end of school is just a complete blind walk across the street. And a lot of kids do that to go over to the playground or to do sports, those kinds of things.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
No public comments.
Thank you, No. Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to try to make it as simple as I can. Items 1 and 2, I move that they both be continued.
I second.
Okay. I think doing them together is a little bit unusual, but under the circumstances, I'll just restate. Commissioner Anderson has moved that we continue item 1. Susan Palmer requests concept plan approval for 2 industrial buildings in a proposed airport industrial zone, AI, located at 3701 West Center Street. And item 2, Susan Palmer requests a zone change from A110 to airport industrial for approximately 33 acres located at 3701 West Center Street. And we do have a second. Do we have any discussion on the motion?
Do we need to have a continuance date?
Not necessarily. Continued until agreement is reached, I suppose.
That's the intent that I had, yeah, is that it would not be to a date specific.
Okay. Let me go ahead and call roll. Commissioner Miller,
Aye.
Commissioner Fife,
Aye.
Commissioner Anderson,
Aye.
Commissioner Knudsen,
Aye.
Commissioner Henry,
Aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Aye.
Commissioner Jensen,
Aye.
and I also vote aye. So that is unanimous to continue items 1 and 2.
Can I ask who seconded the motion?
Gonzalez.
Gonzalez.
It was actually
Was that-
Commissioner Fife that seconded it.
Okay. All right, let's read in items 3 and 4. Steve Turley requests concept plan approval for a mixed-use development with apartments, townhomes, twin homes, and commercial use in a proposed VLDR, LDR, MDR, and CG zone mix over 5.2 acres of land located at 2075 West Center Street. And that's also in the Provo Bay neighborhood. Stephen Turley requests a zone change from R18 to general commercial for approximately 1 acre, medium density residential for approximately 1 acre, low density residential for approximately 2 acres, and very low density residential for approximately 1 acre located at 2075 West Center Street. And Aaron Ardmore has the staff report for these items.
Okay, thank you. Let me just orient you with the property. So here we are on Center Street and 2050 West. The parcel that's being asked for rezone is this long parcel here along 2050 West. You can see on the current zoning map, it's in R18 zone. And the proposal is to split that up into those 4 zones, about 1 acre of CG zone, then followed by medium density, low density, and very low density residential zone. As you read in your staff report, Provo City is not in favor of this. We find that it's in violation of the general plan or not congruent with the general plan, where the top acre would be supported for a commercial zone by staff, but everything below that falls into that residential, no more than 4 units per acre. So we're recommending that the rezone and concept plan are denied because of those issues that the city worked through a general plan and Southwest future land use plan to identify areas for higher density. As you can see in some of these bubbles, this property just isn't one of those. So to stick with that direction of the city council and the general plan, we would hope that there'd be a recommendation for denial here. Jumping into the concept plan, just to show kind of what they would do with those zones. You could see the commercial portion here with the building and parking associated with that. Moving down to the medium density has a 30-unit apartment building or condo. And then below that is the low density residential unit of 24 townhomes. And then below that, the very low density has 8 twin homes. So you can kind of see how that would fit in with the area. Again, R18 to the west, commercial here on the corner, and then R1 as you go across 2050 West. I've got the floor plans and elevations of each of these concepts if you'd like to see that. But maybe it'd be appropriate to leave it on this slide where it kind of gives you an overview of the concept. But that's all I have really prepared. But I'm happy to take any questions that you might have.
Okay, commissioners?
Yeah, this is Commissioner Fife. Oh, sorry. I didn't raise my hand.
Okay, Commissioner Henry, and then Commissioner Fife.
Okay, was just curious, the city's expectation, that road is a continuation of Geneva Road, correct? Main one down the middle. Is that intended to eventually extend all the way to Lakeview Parkway? And will that be designated as a collector arterial? What's kind of the intent of that road?
That's a great question for Rob Hunter.
Yes, that is the continuation of Geneva Road 2050 West, and it is intended to be minor arterial, which is the same width as a collector. But
okay, because yeah, it seems like it's kind of the center of that part of town, but that would be a fairly high traffic road once everything kind of develops out.
Potentially.
Okay. Okay, that's all the questions I have.
Okay, Commissioner Fife.
Thank you, Commissioner. I guess my question is, just in clarification, besides this top portion of the plan, the rest of the three parcels are not in accordance with the general plan. Is that correct? That's right.
Yeah. So those aren't densities that were imagined or anticipated with this section of the city in the goals and the policies made in the Southwest Area Future Land Use Plan.
And so, sorry, and I kind of looked at this, but I guess I want to ask you, what are the future intended uses for those lower three parcels?
So that would just fall into the general one family detached residential of no more than 4 units per acre.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, Commissioner Jensen.
So I know when we talked about how this general plan and the Southwest area plan look, that those bubbles are intentionally so that they're not property specific, so they can sort of move as needed within reason. How far down, if you could show us with your mouse maybe, Mr. Ardmore, how far down on the map that we're looking at does this property go outside of that red bubble? So that he's asking to be commercial is really just the part that's underneath the red bubble?
That's correct.
Okay. I just didn't know if there was any wiggle room for doing something like a mixed use that would include housing on the upper portion a little bit outside of that bubble, and then something that had the very low density below that. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Miller.
Yeah, I guess Commissioner Henry brings up a good point that kind of makes me wonder too, this idea of sticking to 4 units per acre. How is that gonna, be factored into things like minor arterial roads? Because in my mind, sure, that might be the general plan's idea, but like he said, it seems like on those higher trafficked roads, would we want that low density still? I don't know, just kind of a thought.
Sure, I could address that. So that was definitely a question when the city and stakeholders and city council went through this land use plan for a couple of years. A lot of study and thought went into that, and specific nodes were kind of identified on major corridors, major intersections to provide more of those densities. And a limiting factor here is infrastructure capacities. So you can't necessarily just move those around without affecting all the rest of it. So they've identified specific nodes for those intensities. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that does. Thanks.
Okay, any additional questions for staff? Is the applicant here?
He is.
Oh.
Let me.
Okay.
He's got some slides. So give me a minute, and I'll pull those up and move the camera. There we go.
Okay, Commissioner Henry had a comment or a question. So.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Another question, in those mixed use areas, especially that mixed use center, was there any increase in density for those, or were those areas not planning on residential? Or yeah, that village center commercial mixed use, was that also 4 units to the acre?
No, if you look over to the key on the right, any residential that was mixed in with that was imagined up to 30 units per acre if there's a mix of uses.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
All right. And so applicant's presentation.
Can you do that in presentation mode there for me, Aaron? Thank you. Commissioners, grateful for your time tonight. I'm Steve Turley, and I'm the owner of this property, and actually excited to share this with you tonight for the reasons we'll share. We don't disagree with anything that the city said, except for one detail, which we think is pretty critical. Let me introduce you to the project. As you've seen, it's on the center street, so that would be the thank you, furthest to the north. There is a commercial pad, and I got to tell you, there's no lack of enthusiasm for that commercial pad. We want to put as much as we can there. We tried to max out that space so that we could provide maybe fast casual dining, maybe some kind of retail. We have no shortage of people that want to bring a Sodalicious or a cookie place in there. I was hoping for some real food on the west side, but we have there is a lot of excitement about what's going on there. And we do, as we move to the south, those are condos and flats that we want to put in there. This is consistent with the west side plans and the general plan that talks about these kind of mix of housing types. As you'll see about midway through that picture, our intention is to connect 130 South Street to the west to the existing 130 South Street, which creates a natural boundary between the more dense uses to the north and the less dense uses to the south. So if you'll see our townhome segment, the one that's the third down, we have a ton of open space, and we have the amenities that we think will complement whatever's going on there. But then bounded to the south of that is 220 South Street. This is a street that's planned to connect to the vacant areas that are further to the west, providing again yet another buffer to the even less dense use further to the south of that, the VLDR area there. So we go from a dense commercial use to the heavier mixed medium density residential use, and then further south the townhomes, and then buffering against those densities with twin homes. I think it's a great project, and we're grateful for the shout out from the staff that said this under normal circumstances is sound planning. So we take our first kudo off of that. The next thing is the much needed commercial. Everybody that we talk to asked for, some even begged for some kind of commercial. And I don't want to score the fact that it's anticipated there, and that we have every intention of doing everything we can to make that successful. It's interesting to note, though, that when we came in, first of all, actually prior to purchasing the property, we were told to make that corner a mixed use corner. We were told to put vertical mixed use. So do something that would be retail below and then housing above. And I'll get to that in a little while as to why, what Mr. Ardmore's comments are about if such a use was anticipated, that would be anticipated to have 30 units on that site. If we could fit it to make 30 work there. And we'll talk about how we decided to use the horizontal mixed use option and to spread that density out further to the south. But keep in mind, because that's going to be an important point later, the multiple housing types we've talked about, the owner-occupied opportunities. If this isn't a compelling need, and we're able to satisfy that by creating these home ownership opportunities in this project, which in some of these different housing types, you have the affordable housing options that are created here that may not be available elsewhere, or if because of the high cost of land, the only option to put in here would be a single family home on a 3rd acre lot is cost prohibitive. I think if you were to look at this in the under the or behind the lens of affordable housing options. Open space, we exceed Provo City standards on that for all the zones requested. The parking exceeds the city standards. In fact, I will say that we did get one negative comment. If you'll see on the staff report on item number 4, one of the issues that the neighbors weren't happy about was that we provided too much parking, which rarely is a problem, but for some reason exceeding the city standards was in someone's mind not the best thing. But there's no lack of parking over here. Street access, as been mentioned by 3 of you, we have immediate access to a collector street. This is where density is supposed to be, and this is the appropriate type of sound planning that buffers the densities that would be further to the west from an arterial street. And while I won't disagree with Mr. Ardmore when he talks about we're supposed to have these densities at the nodes. Yeah, tell that to the people that live between the nodes. They're going to be that pass-through traffic. Our development won't have any of that pass-through traffic. We're not going to be going through any neighborhoods. We're going to be the neighborhoods that the other guys drive through in order to get to those collector streets. We've talked about buffering the zoning densities, not only within our project, but then to the west of the project. I'm gonna trash talk myself here for a minute by saying that there's some blight issues over there. The property that we just are taking title to is a heavy industrial use. There's truck traffic in and out of there, and a lot of it, and has been for decades. And there's been no efforts to clean that up or to provide some kind of better looking area there. Well, we want to do that. We want to replace the blight and the heavy industrial uses with new retail and common managed residential properties, common HOA type common management of the landscaping, the exteriors. I'm also going to emphasize that this is transit friendly. This is where we need more density. It's the UTA's bus route 833 stops at the project. And if we were to ever put density somewhere, those transit corridors are exactly where we're supposed to be. I will say we had neighborhood support. And I don't know how you judge neighborhood support. We haven't found anybody negative yet. We found some that are qualified in their support, but everything that we've provided has been warmly welcomed. I'm going to qualify this next bullet point here so that Jonathan doesn't get mad at me. The neighborhood chairs support it. The 4 neighborhood chairs that are immediately adjacent to it, Wendy and Brian, have been unreserved in their support for this. The asterisk next to the Fort Utah neighborhood and the Lakeview South neighborhood is they said we like what's going on here. And Jonathan, don't let me put the words in your mouth. But there's a big asterisk there, and that's sewer. We got to make sure that we can handle the sewer, which we'll talk about that in a minute. The open city hall comments, there was plenty of traffic there, and there was plenty of support there as well, which we were pleased for. The public's had an opportunity to talk about this for over 3 months, and the negative comment that came back was just don't make this look like Orem, and we're good. So we do think that the general plan supports it, and in a lot of different ways, and we'll talk about that. But I'm not gonna dodge the fact that the sewer capacity with the big asterisk is what we want to address. And if we can overcome that, we want your vote in support of this and recommend approval from the city council. So let's talk about that for a minute. This is the map that you're all familiar with, that you see in the staff report, that many of you have helped in the creation of. And I think it's fair to say that those little blobs in there are a general discussion of what developers and what the community can anticipate as part of any development plans. But we want to get specific about this area here that we're affected, or that we are affecting. So in that red box, let's drill in that. Let's drill in on that a little closer. So this is the area. Commissioner Jensen brings up a really good point about well, where is the line? As you can see, what is that? 40% of our project isn't determined. It isn't delineated. And respectfully, we just disagree when Mr. Ardmore says that the only part of that salmon, is that salmon? It's not pink, it's salmon. We'll call it salmon. In the upper area, it doesn't stop there. There's no property boundary there. There's no street that's there. And so as you can see, what we've done is overlaid our property over that area. We don't deny that part of that area is does lie in the 45 acre that's designated as res, or as the residential area. But if that's just the general discussion, I think we'll agree that those little yellow, or those little areas, are just blobs that are intended to illustrate the undeveloped areas. So if we have an additional sewer capacity, the demand is going to be on the undeveloped areas within these blobs, and not the developed areas. And I'll just bring your attention really quick to the southeast corner of that intersection is a fully developed 7-Eleven with a Wendy's. And so while the blob seems to show that that's a node, it isn't included in that 22 acre detail as to what would be the undeveloped areas that would make a demand on that additional sewer, those additional sewer connections. So then I took the liberty, and I've tried to be I've tried to be as detailed as I could be. I went through the blobs and I allocated the undeveloped areas within those blobs. As you can see on the image on the right, it shows you the 45 acres of undeveloped property that are designated as residential, and it also shows that on the north and the east, in that village center area, the mixed use area, where those 22 acres are. Just so you'll know, the village center community areas to the north are bounded by a park designation that has an acreage, and then to the east, north of Center Street, it has the other designation which bounds it. And so there's only so much undeveloped property within that area, and we respectfully submit that this is the accurate representation of what those blobs represent as far as the undeveloped properties. And you'll see that per Commissioner Jensen's comments, there are 2 acres within our project area that logically fit within this sewer allocation that's higher. That's within the what Mr. Ardmore just suggested is that the allocation of sewer in the pink area is 30 units to the acre. And we've had other staff that have confirmed this as well, that have said that if it's pink, then it's 30 units to the acre. If it's yellow, it's 4 units to the acre. And so on this next slide, which to me is the general plan and is consistent with what we've been at, you'll see on the right, village center community mixed use is 30 units to the acre. And the LDR is 12 and the res is 4. We get it. So now we just simply move over to the subject property, and with 2 acres in the pink area and 3.2, the balance of the acreage in the res area, our 5.2 acres, if you work that math, there's 72.8 EDUs that are allocated for this area. The planning staff have confirmed this. Our public works people have confirmed this. The only question is is what amount of acreage is allocated. That said, if you'll go to the far right of that drawing, we break out our EDUs. We have 7, and this is based on a pretty complicated formula of a very large 100-seat restaurant. So we didn't shave any corners there. We gave it the what I can tell you, we're not putting 100 seats in that restaurant, but if we were, that allocation for EDUs is 7. Our MDR, of course, 30 units is 30, LDR is 24, and VLDR is 8, which our total sewer request, if you will, is 69. Is 69 EDUs, and we have been allocated, if you will, in that area, 72.8. So our request is that if we look at that area, rather than blobs, if we go with it at the extreme interpretation that we think the planning staff has done, it curtails that. It basically says, oh no, you only get credit for the part that's definitely in the pink, and the 3 acres that aren't in the pink, you don't get any credit for. And if you do get credit, you get it at the lowest amount, rather than what you've seen from this drawing here. The 22 acres applies, the 22 acres of the pink apply to this particular area. And so while I am excited about this, this is a great project. This is an exciting project and a real addition to the west side. We aren't taking more off the table than has been allocated in this particular area. I want to actually just take you one step further and then appreciate your giving me the time that I have. This is the future land use plan, which you've all seen. It's the general plan that has yet to be adopted, but you'll see our area again is bounded in that red box on the left, and because of the graphics, I'm sorry that it's hard to read, but I don't think you'll be unfamiliar with the fact that area, and we'll zoom in on here in a minute, is designated as a mixed intensity. Is that what it says? Medium intensity, sorry, mixed use. And the discussion about that dark brown area doesn't mention anything about single family homes. It talks about this medium density, which is the exact project that we propose here. And if you go here, and I just put these comparisons out there so you can see, on the left is the thing we've discussed. On the right is that allocation if we true up that undeveloped area. But then on the right, you have that dark brown area, which is designated as our future expectation is that's going to be the medium density mixed use, which doesn't include the single family homes. So again, I respectfully disagree with the planning staff that say, oh no, we need that to be 4 units to the acre. So again, I've had a lot of fun. We went through the general plan, the proposed general plan, and everything that's highlighted is exactly what we're delivering. So we won't spend the time going through it, but everything that we're proposing is called for in the general plan over and over and over again. So our elevations, we've got a good looking project, and we're proud of what we're proposing. And we don't think we're taking too big of a bite at the apple here. And we hope that by sharing this presentation with you, we invite this dialogue as far as the planning staff to reconsider what they've allocated as that mixed use commercial. And if their 22 acres allocation adds up different than ours, then we're willing to reconsider. We just think we leave some units or some sewer connections, if you will, on the table, and we're not asking more than what I think the city has in their expectations. So again, we respectfully ask for your votes, and I'm happy to entertain any questions you have.
Thank you, commissioners. Commissioner Gonzalez.
Yeah, I'm wondering I don't know if it went too fast, but which neighborhood chairs are immediately adjacent to the subject property?
We are in the Provo Bay neighborhood, and Fort Utah is to the immediate north. Lakeview South is north of that, and then to the east of the Provo Bay neighborhood is Sunset.
Okay, and then the second question I have is how committed are you to the apartment use? is it feasible to have that as an extended commercial area? Scrapping the apartments and having it all those two buildings both be commercial?
I've never thought of it, Commissioner, but you've asked, so I'm thinking about it. I'm open to anything. I want to do what's right on the west side. I bought a house on the west side, and I'm excited to make this my neighborhood, my home, and if that is viable as a commercial spot, yes, I'm open to it.
Commissioner Henry.
This is a question just so I understand. Next to your property to the west, is a really, really long, narrow property. Has any talk been with that owner to include some of that parcel in yours, or is he not willing to sell?
Very good question, and the answer is yes. We thought more would be better here, and our difficulty was the price. We did make them an offer that was significantly more than we had to pay, which is fine, and yet we would very much like to bring that property in if at all possible. The price at this point was prohibitive, but we have every expectation after this meeting and after a city council meeting to talk to him again and see what we could do to make that work.
It just feels like to leave that parcel, the single family on the west, they're not going anywhere. And to redevelop this parcel leaves that weird strip. It would be nice if possible. Obviously, we're not going to force you to do that. But I was just curious if those discussions have occurred to get that owner, so we can do something with that really odd parcel, since we're doing something anyway. That is all.
We'll make our best efforts, right? I can assure you.
Okay, I appreciate that. That's all I have at the moment.
Thanks. I appreciate Commissioner Henry's comments there, and also the recommendation to expand the commercial. Personally, I think I'm persuaded that the MDR apartments that you're talking about actually should fit within the zone. I'm a little bit more concerned about the two developments that are further south. But as what you're proposing for the two in the north, that doesn't bother me at all. It seems like that is a perfect location for that kind of thing. And certainly having slightly higher not slightly, it is higher density housing. But if it were on top of the commercial, it would be fine. So I don't think that putting it to the south of the commercial is a deal breaker in my view. Further south, I have more questions. But it's an intriguing project. What do other commissioners think? Commissioner Anderson.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think that there needs to be more affordable housing in that part of the community, from what I understand about just kind of the current housing composition around the urban village center or the village commercial center. And yet I don't hate what's proposed kind of from a density perspective. I appreciate, I think, what the applicant's trying to do by way of gradually decreasing the density as the design gets farther from Center Street. But for me, that just creates kind of a situation where there's a lot going on from a design, kind of like a visual perspective. I'd almost be more comfortable with just one consistent kind of a housing product throughout. I think that would just look better along the streetscape there. And to be real blunt, the elevations that we have in the staff report for the kind of stacked flat building, I really, really don't like. And I'm not sure that the elevations for the other two types of buildings I'm not sure that I don't like them, but I'm not sure that they really kind of fit in with that neighborhood. So those are my thoughts.
Can I respond to that really quickly, Madam Chair?
Yes, you may.
Commissioner Anderson, I agree. I apologize. The stacked flats was a mistake, and I don't know what solar system it came from, but it just didn't do the right thing. We are absolutely open. Please move that along. That was that was not supposed to be there. The exteriors are when I say negotiable, we tried to comply with that West Side development standard that talked about blending them into the country kind of thing. And so as we struggle to figure that out, we're more than happy to take the recommendation to get it right, and we would modify anything to get it right.
Commissioner Jensen.
I was not making a comment because mine's more of a discussion, but since our comments have kind of gone that direction, I just want to throw this out there.
Ms. Jensen, Madam Chair, it would probably be good for us to finish taking public input before the planning commission starts to deliberate. So
that's what I was leaning towards. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought we were still discussing with the applicant, but we can move on to the public hearing.
Some of the comments were more like, here's how I feel about it, and not asking them questions. So I didn't know if you wanted me to chime in. Oh, wait.
Okay. Well, we can start the public hearing portion of it. Neighborhood chairs would be first. If I know Jonathan is there, I don't know if there are other neighborhood chairs in the room.
Yeah, so thanks. Provo Bay is not here. I would defer to them first. As was mentioned, our neighborhood borders to the north. An interesting, I guess, footnote. I don't know how this should be handled. A neighborhood meeting was announced and held. However, my neighborhood somehow missed that notification. And apparently one person attended that neighborhood meeting. So something went wrong in the notifications of that meeting there. But mostly I want to comment as a member of the committee that made that land use map. And this has been kind of an ongoing question that I think it's important for us to address. And I think there's two principles we need to make sure that we're following here. First of all is that the density on the west side, the total number of sewage connections was set by Public Works as a pretty hard cap. City Council has taken that as a hard cap that we're going to use out there. So we need to kind of stick to that, right? We don't want to start fudging it, especially because the second principle is consistency, because if we start allowing increased densities for one developer, every other developer is going to ask for it. And then who do you allow and not allow? How does that work out? So based on that, we've had discussions in the past since we made that map on how these kind of borders should be taken. Can we go back to, I actually really liked the view where he had changed it into the open space one, which were more rectangular instead of a blob kind of thing. Not that one. Maybe the last slide, I think, had a comparison. This one. Yeah, that one will do it. Slide 6. Or this one. Yep, this works too. Okay. So this has come up before with a node down on Lakeview Parkway, where a developer was looking at putting, something like a gas station on the corner and was asking about transferring densities to other places. And so planning staff brought several of us neighborhood chairs in, people that served on the committee, and said, hey, how should we handle this? And in that case, it was decided that we should not, if they are having a commercial property, that provides value to the land, it provides them a development opportunity. And so we should not feel obligated to divert those densities to other areas. And so when I talked to Steve earlier, I mentioned that in my mind, that area needs to be removed, which removes about, I think when I did the math with him, it's about 20 units from the area. In fact, if you go to the next slide, that has the Excel sheet. So that would decrease the number of acres in the MDR kind of zone. And also the res zone is actually not 4 units per acre. The overall average for the west side is 4 units per acre. To get that average while having some higher density nodes, we designated the res areas as 3 units per acre. And that's actually the intent statement. That's the next item. And so that removes some units as well. And so for me, I don't have particular issues with the overall design. I like that there's commercial in the corner. I like that he's fading the densities away, but I think the overall units do need to come out somewhat so that we can stay within the parameters that we've set within the plan and be consistent developer to developer as we go through and develop the west side.
Thank you. That's helpful. Are there any other neighborhood chairs wishing to comment? All right, we will open it up to general public comments. Do we have any?
No public comments. 15 seconds.
Yeah, hey, I'm Jeff Miller. I live at 49 South, 2120 West, which is adjacent to that small strip you were referring to. I'm back to back against that. And as Steve mentioned, the heavy trucking over there is basically intolerable in my book. And the only heartburn I have about his proposal is the 3-storiness of the thing blocking and the density of that traffic of Geneva Road. So that, I mean, already the traffic at the stoplight, Geneva and Center is backing up into 2120. So we can't even get in and out of our street, which is, I think his proposal is going to make our dead end street a thorough put, which will bring more traffic down my street, which I'm not real too happy about. But anyway, I'm all for housing, but 3 stories, 60 units, an acre is way too many. And like we said, it's got to be better than the trucking. But that's mainly, I was here crying about the trucking.
Okay, thank you.
Anyway, I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Okay, any other public comments?
No colors.
All right, we will close the public hearing portion of these agenda items. And Commissioner Jensen?
So what I was thinking, I love the idea of this using zoning as a buffer from the high density uses to the lower density. But this is a really small parcel to contain 4 separate zoning designations. So my inclination would be to do a CMU zone on that top where there's residential and commercial mixed, and then to do an R1. I don't know that you could go smaller than an R18 in order to stick to the 4 units per acre. And, or maybe you could do an R16 on the lower half with a development agreement saying that the lots on the north will be 6,000 square feet, but the lots on the bottom will be 10,000 square foot, so that you can use the zoning that would fit within the gross 4 units per acre, and you could step it down within your own development that way, to create your own little buffer like he's done, but with slightly lower densities. I think that it would be silly to expect single family to go all the way up right next to the corner lot. But I think, like Mr. Hill said, that the whole reason we've been talking about the West Side Plan and the intent statement for so long is because there are physical parameters that we have to stay within. And if we don't stick within those for one, then we shortchange somebody else and make it so they can't do anything with their property. So
let me make sure I understand, Lisa. You're saying that what he's got is 2 parcels on the top. You would make 1 CMU, and then the 2 parcels at the bottom you would do as R1 something.
Yeah. Just because the gradually zoning your way down is great. But when we're talking about 1 acre for this zone, 1 acre for this zone, 1 acre for, it feels so piecemeal. It feels like we could do it more smoothly. And since the sewer requirements, the West Side Plan requirements don't allow for higher density anyway, it doesn't really make sense to put those other zones in there just as a placeholder. I would just zone it for what it actually can be, which is that we would perhaps feel comfortable with the commercial general plan designation being rezoned in an area that was slightly larger than the bubble shown on the map, because it meets the intent, which is to provide something useful in commercial at that node. Not just we're just trying to put something commercial here just to check it off a list, but we actually want it to be useful to the community. And so allowing him to go down a little further with that than what the bubble shows would, in my mind, meet that requirement and still allow the higher density housing to be in conjunction with that. So I would be comfortable with that. Making it cleaner as far as a zoning request change and still meeting the intent and also meeting the parameters, the physical parameters of the property and the west side. Those are my thoughts.
Thanks. I would support what you just recommended. Other commissioners? Commissioner Fife.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To address that resident's question, the one who lives adjacent to these parcels, is there a height limit or requirement for building height in that area? I know that in my area it's like 30 feet. Does that exist? Yeah. What's the requirement there?
Yeah, so each specific zone has its own height requirement. I know LDR is 30, MDR is 75 feet.
All of the R1, all the R1.
All of the R1 to the west is 35 feet.
Right. CMU would allow 75 feet.
CMU would allow 75, MDR would allow 75, LDR would allow 30.
Okay. Commissioner Miller.
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Jensen on the idea that, like, it makes more sense kind of to clean things up on the zoning, but that to kind of stick strictly to like the general plan just because something's not quite within a bubble makes less sense to me than to go off of what the use of the road is going to be for. So being like a minor arterial road like that, I would imagine that the alternative, if they did just 4 units to the acre, we'd get 12 houses that would have single family houses that would have a mortar wall between them and this road. And that in my mind would be much less appealing than street facing townhomes. I agree with Commissioner Anderson that the elevations for these aren't great, but if we got some really good elevations of some products that could go and face the street, and in my mind, that makes more sense to me than sticking to the general plan, because the use of that road is going to end up being high traffic, and so the alternative is single family houses with a mortar wall between them and the street. So I agree with Commissioner Jensen.
Thank you. Commissioner Henry.
I'm not as bothered by the multiple zones. I feel like that's the whole point of the intent statement, is to mix that up a little bit, but I'm not as bothered by that, but I understand the point. The one thought I had though, Aaron, would you mind going back to the West Side Plan slide? Yeah, this one here. The thing that's always bothered me about this plan is that neighborhood mixed use on 600 South and 2050 West. As we look at that village center, we're getting proposals for drive-throughs. And yet so it makes me wonder what in the world would ever go on that corner at 600 South. And I can't see anything more than like a townhome with a hair salon in the basement. Like just the scale of everything here. I question if that neighborhood mixed use is really ever going to be anything at that 600 South node. And maybe it will, but I've never been able to figure out what would go in on that node that would be successful and viable that would allow a developer to create it. And so to be up there in that village center mixed use, I struggle with this plan seeing a drive-through restaurant. A village center to me is a more walkable neighborhood, and a drive-through restaurant isn't a walkable use. To see something that meets the corner, is a building that helps define the intersection with shops on the bottom, with apartments above, that to me says village center, not a Wendy's or a Taco Bell. And so I see again, this proposal is mixed but separated uses. We've got each block is its own use. So I would love to see something that is actually mixed use on that corner. A sit-down restaurant that meets the street, that starts creating a very different, it would be a very different typology than what's there now. But I think that was the intent of that village center, was to create something a little more walkable, a little more mini downtown feel. And then again, the other thing that's bothered me about this plan is it does ignore the road versus adjacent use situation. An arterial road should have a higher intensity than a local private or a local residential street. And so it seems like a missed opportunity not to put higher densities on Geneva Road, where you would have lesser uses in those central blocks. And then just the last concept or question, the conceptual elevation, it's kind of funny. While I don't like the 3-story elevation, I like it more than some of the things we've seen because it actually has some symmetry and some hierarchy. It looks like a 70s mid-century modern building where so much of what we see is just random blocks that have no rhyme or reason to them. So I actually like that more than what we've seen, but agree that architecture does need maybe a little bit of work. But those are my comments. That's what I have for now.
Thank you. Anyone else? Commissioner Knudsen, you live on that west side. Do you have any thoughts?
My thoughts kind of go along with what Jonathan said. I'm concerned about the sewer. I've tried to say that there is no concern, but I'm still concerned about it. I like the idea that we are getting rid of the old look of the area, and it'll be a new looking with the commercial in the front and the homes down the street. I like that. But it will change that kind of blighted area right now. I know that the property to the west that you've been talking about has recently sold. That Randy Hinckley that owned it has sold it. Whether the people who purchased it are interested in selling it, I have no idea. But I don't think we could consider that will be ever part of it. Those are kind of my thoughts.
Thank you. All right, anything else, or are we ready for a motion? I'm kind of hearing that we are liking sort of the the general aim of this, but some specifics may need more attention. And so it's possible that continuing this would be the best option. Commissioner Jensen.
I was just going to make a motion.
Okay. Commissioner Miller, did you want to say anything before there was a motion?
Oh, I was just going to say I agree with you. I think continuing this could be a good option.
Okay, Commissioner Jensen.
Okay, well, that's exactly what I was going to make a motion to do. I would like to make a motion that we continue item number 3. Steve Turley requests concept plan approval for a mixed-use development with apartments, townhomes, twin homes, and commercial use in a proposed VLDR, LDR, MDR, and CG zone mix over 5.2 acres of land located at 2075 West Center Street. The continuance would be until he's able to take the comments that were made tonight to bring it more into line with the intent of the area and the sewage constraints.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
That was Commissioner Knudsen.
Yes.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion on the motion? Commissioner Fife.
So what exactly, just for my clarification, I guess it was mentioned the sewer capacity and whatnot. From what I saw on the slides that he presented and the different zoning structures that he was presenting, the sewer capacities were met. I'm just trying to figure out what actionable items we can give to this gentleman so that next time he comes, it's more of a streamlined process of a yay or nay decision. Does that make sense?
Yes.
What
think
exactly are the actionable items?
I'm thinking that Commissioner Jensen's CMU sort of combination for those two top ones would make some sense. With the sewer capacity, I know that overall it is limited to the 4 units per acre. We'd probably need to get Rob to comment on precisely what this proposal would do. So let's hear Commissioner Anderson, and then if Rob has anything to contribute, he can jump in.
Yeah, again, for me, design and details. So I don't think we have necessarily a really detailed landscaping plan. Maybe I missed it, but for the zoning, you're just really getting a really good feel for all of the different components of the project and what they would look like, including building elevations for any of the non-residential uses, and that sort of thing would be important for me.
So along with the question that Mr. Fife asked, I believe it was, the planning commission has suggested a CMU zone, which allows a 75-foot building height. So is the planning commission comfortable with 75 feet of building height at that intersection?
I don't know where else you'd put it. If we're going to say this is a place for commercial, then we need to allow commercial, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a good idea. I'm just saying that's what the general plan kind of is giving it permission to do right now.
And there's also the limit of 30 units per acre, even in that commercial mixed use. So
can't go very high.
That's not going to go that high. Commissioner Henry.
Maybe staff can clarify this for me, but I believe we talked several months ago about this idea of if we approve something on one side, it's going to open the floodgates for other people to ask the same. And what I remember was that each project is considered on its own merits. And if the planning commission sees merit to grant variances or different conditions because of site conditions, that's acceptable. And that doesn't open floodgates because each project is its own context and will be considered on its own merits. Is that correct?
Yes and no. It depends on the reasons for the the decision you're making. If one of your findings or reasons to grant a higher density is because this is along a higher trafficked road, a collector or an arterial, there are miles and miles and miles of arterials and collectors going to the west side. If that's a finding on this project, every developer and every property owner who has frontage on a collector or arterial road is going to be asking for more density because they're on an arterial or collector.
I don't think it's
Really
the
quickly-
arterial or collector that's the controlling factor here. It's that it's at least partially overlapping that village center commercial mixed use. And anybody else who's in that sort of village center type of a situation, but the arterial in general is not what I'm thinking about. I'm looking at the blob and thinking, well, it's a blob and the border of that blob isn't really defined, and his rectangular definition kind of made sense.
So in answer to Brian's question, it depends on your finding and your reasoning. As to
In that matter, Madam Chair, my thinking is it's an arterial also in that mixed use zone, which would give us the context would allow for, I guess that would only be in the upper portion and where we decide to draw that line. And then the lower portion that is the LDR and VLDR must adhere to the 4 units to the acre. Okay. I think that answers my question.
Okay. I thought I saw another hand. Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you. I really appreciate Commissioner Fife's question, just by way of trying to give the applicant some direction that he can follow in hopes of making this easy down the road. Maybe to comment on that first. I think the devil will be in the details a little bit in terms of exactly what the design ends up looking like. I think it goes beyond just exactly, maybe where the boundary is between a couple of different zoning districts and that sort of a thing. And I think from a design perspective, there probably are a lot of different things that could work, in my opinion, there. I think there needs to be, in my view, some consistency relative to the design. I think it does need to be sensitive to what's around that intersection and what might be around it in the future, which is going to be very distinct, I think, from other parts of the city where we've seen, maybe big, massive buildings and that type of a thing. But relative to this site maybe getting its own consideration, I can't think of an intersection on the west side of I-15 in Provo that I would consider to be more significant today than this one. I think that's why the village center commercial designation is there. So looking at that distinctly from any other part of any other corridor on the west side of town, I think is really easy. Maybe to Commissioner Henry's thoughts and questions, I think by all means, we could justify looking at this very distinctly from a lot of other things. And I think that's warranted. I think it is different. But I'm hesitant to get too committal about anything until we see some other layouts. I wonder if maybe that'd be worth taking some time on in a work session, and maybe seeing a couple of rough layouts or something like that we could comment on before the applicant goes full speed on a lot of effort with design.
That's a good suggestion. Other comments, questions?
Commissioner Diaga, I think you had asked me to give some input. I haven't seen the calculations that Steve presented, and so I can't speak to specifically how many units he's I guess equivalent units he's calculating that he has versus how much we think he has. But in terms of the overall, I think to speak to what Bill was saying is that there can be, even though each project is specific, and there are some things that can be given. I think the thing that we need to keep in mind is that our water resources team is designing and building a lift station and additional sewer out here that is based off of the assumptions of the overall Southwest area plan. And so where there are some specific guidelines that might be able to be tweaked, I guess, or give variance to on this, throughout the city. On the west side, when it comes to the number of units, our designs are moving forward based off of a density that matches what is assumed here on the west side of town. And so there can't be a lot of variance given that would increase the density over what is given. Like I said, I can't speak to the specific calculations. Maybe David Day has seen that before. I have not. So
yeah,
but that is the overall thought.
Thank you. I like this blobby map in some ways, but I mean, you kind of have a question about when you have this salmon colored blob and it's separated from the yellow blob. Do they blend in a sort of orange area, or how does that work? And so I'm kind of thinking that corner may be special. I mean, and all four corners from that intersection seem to be somewhat special for the west side, as Commissioner Anderson said. So that's my sense of this. Commissioner Fife.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So if I'm not mistaken from the conversation, I guess, or the comments that have been made, just so I can make sense of what's going on, we're suggesting that the applicant get us more of an idea as to what design structure this proposal is going to have. Is that the next step in this? Is trying to figure out how this is going to look and appear in the area? Am I missing something, or is there anything else?
I think there's two things. I think that's one of them. I think the other one is going with a not quite so fragmented zoning request, so that it's more, a couple of holes rather than these little packages going down. Just because CMU allows 75 feet in height, I don't think the applicant needs to look to fill that. And whatever design needs to kind of fit with the neighborhood and the area. So I don't think that going that high. I think like a 35-foot or a 40-foot building would be reasonable. Commissioner Anderson.
When we talk about CMU, we are talking about the campus mixed use zone, right?
Yeah, well, that's the name of it, but it seems like when they're talking about CMU, at least from previous discussions we've had, it's not really restricted to the campus area. It could be anywhere in the city.
Not necessarily. If you look at the purpose and objectives, and this is something we can investigate outside this meeting with the applicant if he wants to, but the campus mixed use specific to adjacent to campus area. So there are alternatives that we can look at though.
Okay, but this does have an MU designation. So is it a village mixed use, or how does that work?
There are a few zones in the books that allow mixed use. There's also some that have been drafted by staff that haven't been adopted yet that we could look at. So there's some different tools that we could use.
Okay. Yeah, I think that the details can go off, and I think that it might be helpful to the applicant to bring some interim proposals to a study session so that we can have a little bit more of a dialogue type of a discussion and make comments and make sure that what goes in here, I mean, that's such prime real estate that we want to get it right. And I think that the planning commission would be willing to put in some time to do that. Okay, we have a motion on the table and a second. Do we need to modify the motion?
I think it still stands with, we just gave them more information to gather.
Okay, are we ready to vote? I don't see any objections. Commissioner Miller,
Aye.
Commissioner Fife,
Aye.
Commissioner Anderson,
Aye.
Commissioner Knudsen,
Aye.
Commissioner Henry,
Aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Aye.
Commissioner Jensen,
Aye.
and I also vote aye. So item number 3 is continued for the applicant to work with the city and come up with more appropriate plans. And do we have a motion for item number 4? Commissioner Jensen.
I had a question about that motion. It seems to me that we should deny it because we don't like the 4 different zones, but do we wait until we hear a plan till we know for sure if we like the 4 different zones, or do we continue it? Do we deny? Like, what would staff recommend based on what you've heard us say today?
I think continuing it, he can alter the current application.
Okay, so he doesn't have to reapply if he changes.
If you continue it, yeah. If you deny it, then he has to start over with a new application. So if that gives you some clarity in your choices.
Yeah, I didn't know if he could modify his request to be, even very, very different from what it was.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, do we?
I'll make a motion, Madam Chair.
That would be great. Thank you.
I motion we continue item number 4. Steve Turley requests a zone change from R18 to general commercial for approximately 1 acre, medium density residential for approximately 1 acre, low density residential for approximately 2 acres, and very low density residential for approximately 1 acre, located at 2075 West Center Street.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second. Commissioner Fife.
Commissioner Fife, thank you. All right, do we have any additional discussion on this motion? Not seeing any hands raised, I'll go ahead and call the roll. Commissioner Miller.
Aye.
Commissioner Fife.
Aye.
Commissioner Anderson.
Aye.
Commissioner Knudsen.
Aye.
Commissioner Henry.
Aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Aye.
Commissioner Jensen.
Aye.
And I also vote aye. So that again is unanimous. All right. Moving on to item 5. Development Services requests a general plan amendment to clarify the existing West Side development policies and future land use map with the Southwest Plan intent statement. This has citywide application, and Hannah Salzer has the staff report. Is Hannah there?
Yes, just moving in. We were in the hall.
Okay.
Rotating out the hot seat in here. It's. I will try to keep the introduction portion brief. Our commissioners have heard this before. We've talked about all this before. If any members of the public are interested in a more full record, I recommend watching the recording from the last study session at the end of February, where we talked about this in a little bit more depth. I'll touch on some of the major points though. The intent statement is based on existing policies, namely the West Side development policies that came up in the last item and the future land use map that was on screen for the last item. A couple counselors last year felt like those policies could use a little bit more clarification, especially with the mix of housing types and lot sizes and their integration. They drafted a statement which the council sent to the Planning Commission for review. Planning Commission, after reviewing it, going through a few iterations, decided to really focus in on a few problems to address and start from scratch on a new document that was a little bit more targeted, a little bit more simple. The major problems we were trying to solve is that essentially within sewer limitations and market demands, we were trying to create a diversity of housing stock that focused on lot sizes and move-up housing rather than housing types in order to discourage overly homogeneous developments while maintaining the character of existing neighborhoods and not placing an unnecessary burden on developers. So those were the objectives we were trying to meet, the criteria we were working within. There have been a few small changes to the draft intent statement since the last session. We added an introductory statement, as we talked about. We simplified the graphics so that they are a little bit more streamlined in their message, really only looking at lot size, not housing types, not road types, anything like that, just the message of the lot size. We also have discussed as staff and with the council's housing committee, they support this as well, removing the line about the city's pool of extra units for density bonuses. We feel just that that needs a little bit more refinement before we bring this intent statement forward and could benefit from a little bit more time and discussion and should be brought as its own policy later on. With that, I will jump in. These slides are just the sections of the intent statement so that we can see the changes and walk through some of the highlights together and so that they're on screen. But if you want to see them all in one place, you can go to the staff report in attachment 1. This is the intent statement. The very beginning here is almost verbatim the intent statement of the original, the introductory statement of the original intent statement. Sounds redundant, but that's where we're at. Reaffirming the council's commitment, stating the intent of this statement to clarify, to bring everyone together on the same page. Second paragraph sets out some brief background on why these policies specifically are being recommended, working with the limitations that we have, some of the goals that they're trying to accomplish. I won't linger too long on this since it's in the packets as well. Policy 1, we're changing any time the word requirements comes up to recommendations, simply to clarify again that this is not a requirement for developers, it is strongly encouraged. That is the only change on this section from having discussed it last time, but the essential idea, just to recap, is that lot sizes will be broken into small, medium, and large lot sizes in the buckets shown in this first table up here, subject to the minimum requirements for the zone at least. There's also this table of ratios. So this is where you get to encouraging a mix of lot sizes and hopefully therefore housing sizes and housing prices within developments. The larger the development, the more variety they have to have. In the last meeting, it was pointed out that there were 2 categories. Here at the end, there was a 4th category that had the same requirements. Why weren't those combined? We went ahead and combined those. So now there are only the 3 shown on the table here. These recommendations don't apply to anything less than 10 acres. Between 11 and 19, we encourage a mix of either small and medium or medium and large, but not small and large, simply because that doesn't tend to sell very well. It can create some really unblended neighborhoods. And then for 20 or more acres, they have to be 25 to 40% small lots, 25 to 40% medium lots, and whatever the remainder is of the 100% large lots. We encourage green space, for which developers are responsible, and encourage water-wise management of that green space. Just recapping some areas. This is that portion that staff recommends removing from the draft that we send to council, if that's the planning commission's decision, just so that we can take a little more time to refine it before it gets the level of public scrutiny and adoption and attempted application without being thoroughly thought through. We have also added point 4, this clarification here, that when discussing units per acre on the west side of Provo, acreage should be understood to be gross, not net. There has been some uncertainty among staff. Even when I was first starting this and looking at the land use map where it said 40 units per acre, I asked, Public Works and a few other planners and got different answers. So we felt like that really needed to be standardized, not only for developers, but also internally for staff. This would mean a very slight increase in residential zones. It was previously understood to be 4 units per acre net or 3 units per acre net in residential zones, which balances out to about 2.8 units gross. If we change it to 3 units gross, that is a 0.2 units per acre increase, which Public Works has said should not be a problem. They have no concerns about that. Here are the models looking at the same colors as last time. The paler the color, the smaller the lot, intended only to show potential ways lots could be integrated. Again, these don't apply to units under or developments smaller than 10 acres, so none of these show developments smaller than 10 acres. They show the acres in the model, total lots, and the percentage. This has the small and medium, since again, these smaller developments should not have small and large. The other models have an integration of all 3 kinds with the appropriate ratio balances. There's also one with some green space and townhomes to show how that can be balanced with the density. That is the current state of the intent statement as it has been proposed by the Planning Commission's working group, revised by staff, and revised again by the Planning Commission. Is anything currently unclear? Does it need more refinement or editing? And do you feel comfortable recommending approval? If not, what more needs to be done?
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Jensen.
So I just wanted to restate what I think I heard Hannah say. So tonight we would be voting on this statement as shown, except for the word requirements in number 1 would be recommendations. And then we would remove number 3 until it can be discussed further, which is the bank of units. So this is on page 7 of the staff report, attachment 1.
Yes, and I can pull up a slightly updated version that I was working on as we were getting more of these edits today.
I just want to make sure that I understood you correctly, that you're saying we are voting on what we see in our staff report, except for those 2 things.
Except for the, yes, changing
the word recommendations instead of requirements, and then removing the bank of units option until that can be discussed further.
Yeah, and that requirements to recommendations switch is in point 1 and the description for the models. So it's in 2 spots, but a minor change. That was always the Planning Commission's intent.
Okay, awesome. Now I have one clarification question for you. In 1B, the table of ratios, the first item that you have there says greater than or equal to 10. Is that supposed to be less than or equal to 10?
Yes, it is.
And then, okay, so you can change that, but I think the correct non-confusing way to write that is actually a less than sign with 1 line underneath it.
Yes,
so I will have an equal sign underneath it, so that, because when I looked at that, I thought it meant greater than equals 10, and I was like, that doesn't make any sense. So if that's helpful, I feel like that signage might be useful as well.
Yeah, we'll clarify that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. That's all.
Other questions from commissioners? Comments? I know some of you were involved in creating this statement. I think this is a great direction. And with those minor tweaks and clarifications, I think it's something that would be helpful for the city. I think it is simple and clear. Questions, Commissioner Henry?
Yeah, I think there's been pages and pages and pages discussed to get to this very concise statement that I think encapsulates it well. So if nobody else has a comment, I'd be happy to make a motion.
I do think we need to have open it up to public comment.
Oh, Okay, I'll hold back.
So, but I can come back to you.
Well, okay.
Thank you, Hannah, for showing those changes. That was exactly what I was asking.
Good. And I just wanted to bring up before we get to public comment that we did reach out to some members of the development community to get their input on it. And they had some suggestions. One said they could use more clarification on the development density bonus, the part that we're removing. That was one of the things that prompted us to consider removing it. They didn't see this as a significant burden, which was staff's major concern, is we don't want to discourage development on the west side, absolutely. But unanimously of the people that we talked to, they said, no, this wouldn't be burdensome. They've seen similar versions. There was one done by another city that was a very similar concept, but a lot more confusing, and that they did see as being a significant burden. But this, they had no other concerns about.
There were two. I talked to one additional. There were two cities that tried this, and they were both burdensome, and they felt that what we were proposing was not.
Okay. That's good feedback.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're opening this up at this point for public comments.
No public comments at the moment, 30 seconds.
Is there anyone in the conference room that is from the public that wants to comment?
If you feel inclined.
We have Jonathan Hill here.
I'm going to make sure I comment on every item tonight.
Oh, you should be on the camera.
So we haven't had a chance to do a formal neighborhood meeting with this. I did post it to our neighborhood group on Facebook. Feedback from the neighborhood was positive, and they thought that this was a big improvement over some of the previous versions that we had seen. And comments generally just said, thank you for listening and including us in the conversation. So.
Thank you.
No additional public comments.
All right. Commissioner Henry, do you want to make a motion?
Yes, and before I did want to mention that the graphics I think look great. That really cleaned up, and I know that's hard to do with different sizes, so well done to the planning staff. Let me find my paper here. I motion we recommend approval for item 5. Development Services request a general plan amendment to clarify the existing West Side development policies and future land use map with a Southwest Plan intent statement citywide.
And with the expectation that the minor clarifications we've discussed will be incorporated, correct?
Yes, the recommended required will be changed to recommended, and that anything about bonus densities will be discussed at a later time and removed from this.
All right. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
I heard Commissioner Gonzalez.
Yeah, that's right.
We'll let him. Okay. Any discussion on the motion? Not hearing any, or seeing any, I will go ahead and Commissioner Miller.
Aye.
Commissioner Fife.
Aye.
Commissioner Anderson.
Aye.
Commissioner Knudsen.
Aye.
Commissioner Henry.
Aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Aye.
And Commissioner Jensen.
Aye.
I also vote aye. So again, that is unanimous. Hannah, I think you may have created something that other cities can use as a model, and I think that's awesome. So
It was a collaborative effort with planning commissioners, neighborhood chairs, staff. Hopefully that's the model they follow, is that collaborative process more than anything.
yes, as much as anything, but if it's just so much clearer. All right. Do we have any other housekeeping issues that we need to discuss before we adjourn?
I heard you ask at the beginning of the work meeting about public, are we going to be meeting face-to-face anytime soon? Do we know? I didn't hear the answer though.
Aaron did not know that. I don't know if Bill or somebody else who's there has any more information.
I don't think we've come to a decision on that yet.
Okay. I know the CDC has changed their guidance. And so, but I don't know how that cascades down and whether it has to come through the state first. I personally am ready to return to in-person meetings, but I don't know if everybody is comfortable with those.
Well, duly noted, and we'll continue to talk to the director and to our staff here about that. So see how we can move forward that way.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay. I'll take that as the motion. And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Good job.
Thanks.
Have a
Thanks,
good
Laurie.
day. Bye.